The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am so delighted to introduce our guest today, Bree Jansen, who's the dance teacher and a reading teacher at Lompoc High School in the Lompoc Unified School District. Bree, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
I can't wait also to talk about the fact that you are our 2020 Santa Barbara Bowl Performing Arts Teacher of the Year. Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But really what I'd like to start off is to talk about you and where you were born, raised, and brought up. Will you please talk about that first?
Of course. I actually was born and raised in Lompoc. I went through the Lompoc Unified School District schools, Clarence Ruth Elementary. La Cañada is where my children go. Clarence Ruth Elementary, Lompoc Valley Middle School, and then Lompoc High School, which is now where I teach. My mother, Diane, was a teacher at La Cañada Elementary for 39 years, and my father is actually also a teacher. He taught in the Anaheim School District, and they're both now retired.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing about that. Bree, I can imagine in Lompoc, if you turn around, you're going to bump into somebody you know.
That is definitely true. It's a bonus, but also sometimes you have to make sure that you are not going to the store in your pajamas.
Or if you do, you just have to be aware, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so, Bree, share with us what you were like as a young person. I'm so interested in school youth and children, and I'm curious about you as a student in schools too. What were you like as a young person, and what were some of the activities that you were into?
Well, I was obviously, as you could guess, I was very into dance. I took dance from a very young age at Lompoc School of Dance. Denise Dunlun was my teacher. She is still the teacher at Lompoc School of Dance, teacher, owner, director, and she actually teaches my daughters who now go to that studio. I was very involved in dance, so I didn't play any sports. I did take piano as a child. I learned flute in middle school, so lots of different artistic interests, but my time was mostly taken up with dance. And as most people who study dance seriously know, there's a lot of hours put in the studio. So I was dancing 3 to 4 days a week, usually 3 or 4 hours after school.
And what kind of dance were you learning and participating and enjoying the most?
When you're little at that studio, you start in tap and ballet. So I started in tap and ballet. Around about 5th grade, you're allowed to start branching out into jazz. So I started branching out into that. That was actually before, not to date myself, but that was before hip hop really became a style that was popular. I know that it had started at that time, but it hadn't made its way to Lompoc yet. So mostly ballet, tap, jazz. Tap is my favorite. Unfortunately, it's something that I don't teach now, but definitely my favorite style of dance.
What makes it your favorite?
I guess maybe it comes the easiest to me, and that's a lot of times that's why something is their favorite. I also, the rhythms, I really enjoy the intricacies of it. You have to be very precise in tap. You can't fake your way through because everybody can hear it.
Can't murmur.
Right.
You can't whisper.
Right. And
yes.
If you're even a half a beat off, it's really obvious.
Yeah.
So I think that precision is probably one of the things that attracts me to it.
And what were you like as a student in school, say at elementary school?
Oh, elementary school, I was very friendly. I was the type of student that always wanted to help the teacher, was always volunteering to pass things out. my elementary teachers were all so wonderful for me. I actually had the same teacher for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade.
Wow.
The teacher enjoyed our 3rd grade class so much that she actually ended up moving up with us. Her name was Penny Hazelmo. And I was in the Clarence Ruth at that time was a Montessori school, so there were a lot of different methods than the traditional methods of teaching, and it was a place where it really nurtured my learning. I was able to kind of do things at my own pace, different from the rest of the class, and it really suited me.
Did you evolve in terms of that eagerness and excitedness in terms of school as you grew older, or would you say it stayed the same?
I think it pretty much stayed the same. I mean, being a teacher's kid, I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, I can't ever remember a time when I wasn't, we go to the zoo and we have to read every one of the signs and we have to discuss, the area that those animals came from. So, I mean, it's just something that was natural to me to always have this lifelong learning that's not just within the walls of the school.
It's music to my ears.
Yeah, I know. My mom too. I'm sure that she's enjoying hearing this.
So let's go back to the dance then. Mm-hmm. You started out really young in terms of the dance and interest. What piqued that interest? Was there someone else who was into dance, or how did you get into dance?
It's actually kind of funny. The reason that I got into it was actually my actual physical makeup is my feet naturally turn in, my hips naturally turn in, and the doctor, when I was very young, probably 4 or 5, said, well, we either need to have her wear the brace that they put on your legs, or you can put her into ballet. And so my mom, that sounded much better, and so she had me start taking dance, and it became part of my life, where I don't ever remember not taking dance. So it's just, and then I didn't go into college thinking that that's what I was going to do, but I found my way back, and here I am.
There you are. Well, let's talk about college. Mm-hmm. When you attended college, mm-hmm. which college did you attend, and what did you think you were setting out to do?
I went to UCSB, so UC Santa Barbara. I originally, I think a lot of Lompoc kids have this goal of getting out of Lompoc, going far away, and that was definitely my idea at the start of my senior year. But I think as my senior year went on, I realized that Santa Barbara was far enough away that I could feel independent, but yet still have that support system in Lompoc. So I attended UCSB. I actually started out as a chemical engineering major, with an idea to go into patent law, and law degrees, I wish that I had time to do all of the things that interest me. I think it would have been really fun, but as I was taking my freshman year courses, and at that time computer coding and programming was a big part of the freshman course load, and it just wasn't what I was interested in. And I had a dear friend and mentor, Frank McConnell, who was a professor at UCSB and in the English department. And I was hanging out in his office one day, and I was expressing my frustration to him because I didn't feel that I was doing what I was meant to do. And he finally said, okay, just close your eyes and tell me what you see yourself doing. And I closed my eyes and I kind of sighed and I said, I'm going to be a teacher. And he said, yeah, I think you are. My parents both enjoyed their professions. They both definitely valued it, but they also kind of tried to push me and say, go into something that maybe you'll make more money in or something like that. And when I told them I was going to be a teacher, I don't think it was a surprise to them at all, and definitely not a disappointment. I don't want to make it sound like that they were disappointed, and they're obviously very proud of me. But yeah, that's how I found my way back to teaching and eventually to the arts.
I love that story so much. I was going to ask you, at what point did you know you wanted to be a teacher? I'm going to say, even though it was at that time in college that your professor asked you to close your eyes, maybe you knew when you were in Clarence Ruth.
Oh, I think so. My sister will tell you that was always, we were always playing school, and I was always the teacher. You know, being the older sister, the bossy one. I was always the teacher. She always had to be the student. And yeah, I mean, I think there was never a question. It was just a matter of my resistance.
At another point, let's compare how you and your sister played school with how me and my sister played school. It'll be interesting to see that image juxtaposed. I'm the younger one, so
Okay.
we'll see about
Yes.
that. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So let's talk about dance one more time before we move. We're going to keep talking about it, but about your experience as a dancer growing up. Was dancing professionally anything that you thought you would pursue as you were growing up?
Not really. There were people who came from my studio who went on to be professional dancers. One was dancing even in music videos. I'm thinking of another one who is actually a professional ballerina. I was pretty realistic from the beginning that I definitely was not going to be a professional ballerina. There was just, I don't have the body type, and again with the hips, and so I knew that that wasn't going to happen. I think it wasn't that anyone didn't encourage it. I think it just wasn't something that I realized was an opportunity that I could do, that I could go to Los Angeles and pursue jobs in dance. So I think it was, not discouraged, but just not something I was aware of.
Yeah. And lucky for us in the Lompoc community that isn't the trajectory, because you're really inspiring others to pursue their life's pleasures, really.
I hope
in terms
so.
of definitely.
I hope so. I do have several students who have gone on in the performing arts, not necessarily as a professional dancer, although I do have a few. I have one who actually teaches and is part owner at a studio in Lompoc. And I have several others who are working in musical theater, that area. So.
Well, let's close the loop on the college, because you clearly started to pursue a teaching credential, finished a major. So what was the major? Where did you get your credential? And then the question is, how did we find yourself in Lompoc, teaching at Lompoc High School?
Okay, so I finished my English degree at UCSB. I majored in English. That was a strength of mine. At the time, there was no dance credential. I know they're working on that, and I'm actually going to look into seeing what I need to do so that I can obtain that as well. But my former cheerleading coach, I was on the cheer team in high school, she was also an English major. She did exactly what I wanted to do at Lompoc High, and so knowing that and the fact that English is one of my strengths, I went into that, enjoyed it immensely, and then once I graduated from UCSB, I saw no reason to not continue there, so I applied to their credential school and did my student teaching in the Santa Barbara schools. I student taught at Dos Pueblos. I did pre-professional at San Marcos, and then I did my long-term at Santa Barbara Junior High, which I love. And so I enjoyed that time, and then when it came time to start applying for jobs, I actually applied lots of places all over Southern California. I didn't want to put all of my eggs into one basket. I wanted to make sure that I was going to have something to go to once I graduated, and Lompoc, of course, was one of the ones that I applied. I was offered a couple other places before Lompoc. I interviewed at Lompoc. It was actually really scary at that time. I don't know if they still do this, but it's just you and then all of the principals for all of the secondary schools are sitting around you, and it's very intimidating. Apparently, later I heard that I did really well, but
clearly
it was definitely scary, I will say that. And they actually, after I interviewed, they all discussed together where they thought that I should be hired, and according to the personnel person who I spoke to on the phone, they fought over me, and Vandenberg Middle School won. So I taught for a year at Vandenberg Middle School. I loved that school, loved that staff. But I knew that I wanted to come back to Lompoc High. I knew that that was a place where I was comfortable, that I wanted to give back to that same school that gave me so much of a foundation. And so as soon as I could, I transferred down to Lompoc High. I actually taught lots of different things in the beginning of my career. I taught a class called Opportunity, I taught English 9, I taught beginning dance, all at the same time. And then once my mentor, Kathy Sarkin, retired, I applied for her job, I was chosen, and then it was kind of seamless coming into her position.
I really appreciate that the trajectory and all the different steps that it took and that you took. And one of the themes that's coming through so strongly is this intergenerational or passing down things for your family, from people that you have been your mentors, people from your past. And it doesn't surprise me or anyone watching that you chose to give back to a place that gave you so much.
Definitely.
So now you're here at Lompoc High School. And how does it feel to be back in the same school that you attended?
Oh, I love it. At first, of course, it was different. I was very young. I started teaching when I was 22. I was asked for a hall pass constantly when I was out on the campus because they thought I was a student. And working with teachers that I had, trying to call them by their first name, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really was a challenge for me. And now, of course, I'm very comfortable with everyone. Most of my teachers are gone now. There's a few that are still there, but it was great. It was like I never left, but yet very different, obviously.
Sure.
And obviously the role is very different. But students, I think, enjoy hearing that I went to school there. They enjoy seeing pictures. I have some pictures on the wall of when I was on cheer, and I talk about different teachers that they're familiar with. I tell them, the classroom that I was in before the one I'm in now, I had math in for 2 years. I was sitting in the same desks. And I think that connection with them actually helps because they know that I understand where they're coming from at that time.
Yeah. And being where you grew up, there's a lot of nostalgia, there's a lot of wonderful feeling and emotion. And at the same time, definitely want to acknowledge things have changed. You're part of change, and the school culture is changing to match the times that we're in now.
It is. Yeah. We have a very different demographic now than when I went to school. And our school is very large right now, larger than I can remember it being for the last several years at least. But I am really excited that we have so many kids who want to come to our school, who are requesting to come to our school. And this year, I personally know one that came just so that she can dance, and that's just the best feeling.
Lots of great energy happening for sure. So I would like to talk about the dancing and performing arts. But before we do, let's talk briefly about your current class schedule. What does your class schedule look like today?
So my administration has been really helpful in helping me set up my schedule so that it is easier for me to kind of go back and forth in the different hats that I wear. So I start the morning in dance, and I have first period and third period beginning dance, and then I have my choreography advanced dance class sandwiched between those two, so it's second period, it's our homeroom. And then my prep period, and then after lunch I switch gears and I have 2 reading improvement classes. And then I switch gears again, and my Sapphire team comes in, and they have 7th period, and then we practice after school as well.
Great.
We need
and
more
your
time.
Sapphire team is your dance team that
are.
you created. Very exciting. Sapphire being blue and the colors of the school.
Yes.
Fantastic. And earlier I mentioned to those watching that you are the 2020 Santa Barbara Bowl Performing Arts Teacher of the Year.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
How did it feel when you heard you were our 2020 Performing Arts Teacher of the Year?
Oh, I mean, extremely exciting. I was really surprised. I really didn't expect to be chosen, especially since Lompoc, we kind of have snagged a little bit more than our fair share. We actually have 3 of the 5 Performing Arts Teachers of the Year from the last 5 years. And knowing that, I definitely did not expect to be chosen. So definitely overjoyed to learn that. I was actually at the home of Sarah Barthel, who is my closest collaborator at school. We work together in the drama program. And she, being the way that she is, she couldn't just tell me. She had to make a little game where each letter said a different, and it all spelled out a message to tell me that I had won. And that was really exciting. And it was definitely Sarah, the way that she told me.
Super creative.
She is. I mean, that is definitely, if I had to choose one word, that would be the word for her.
Are you allowed to say what the message spelled out?
I think I have the cards at home. I think that it said congrats, and then what we call it, PATOY, the PATOY, Performing Arts Teacher of the Year, and then 2020. And at first it didn't click. I had just come home from a long trip. I don't remember where I was coming back from. I actually resisted coming to her house. I said, I'm tired. I just got into town. She said, no, come up. And she's very persuasive. And so I came up, and then that was when she gave me the cards. It was very exciting. But then I couldn't say anything because the press release hadn't gone out yet. And of course I told my husband and my mom, but the information kind of trickled out. It took a little while to get the press release out because there were lots of different things that needed to be in place. And my principal kind of spilled the beans at school and announced it to the staff. So then they started congratulating me. So it was actually, for someone who kind of shies away from the spotlight a little bit, it actually worked out well because it wasn't like this moment of overwhelming attention. Yeah. It kind of came on slowly, so it actually worked out well.
So my question was, how did it feel? And now I want to ask, what does it mean to you?
I mean, it's an honor to be one person named in all of the county of the thousands of teachers that we have. I mean, it's an honor that I don't want to say I don't deserve, because I do recognize the fact that I have worked very hard to get where I am. But it's very humbling to think about the fact that I was chosen out of all of these teachers.
That's wonderful. And the fact that Lompoc is generating all of these wonderful performing arts teachers, yes, it says so much about the individual, truly, and really a focus on the arts too as a district, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. Lompoc is a small town. We don't have the exposure to the same culture that Santa Barbara does. We don't have professional companies coming in to perform. I try really hard to bring things in. I've worked with UCSB Arts and Lectures several times to bring in music groups, to bring in dance groups. Last year we had a folklorico group come in. We've had a few musical groups come in to perform. And we've been very blessed that we could have those. I bring my students over to PCPA, to Hancock, to see their dance performances there. So it takes a little bit more work for us to go to where these things are happening. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really important for students to see things that are happening outside our little bubble of Lompoc, and that's another reason why with my Sapphire team we travel down to Southern California to go to competitions. We don't always compete on an even playing field with the big schools from down there, but what I tell them is that next year they won't remember what place we took, but they will remember the other schools that we saw. Yeah. And I think it's really important to expose them to those things. Really, absolutely. You're putting in a lot of extra effort to provide experiences for students that they wouldn't otherwise have if they were staying right where they are. Right. So you're taking them out or bringing people in, and that exposure, that experience is so important. Yeah, I was very lucky to have parents who had the means to be able to take me to Los Angeles to see theater companies, to see musical theater, to take me to PCPA, to take me places, and I was very lucky to have that, but not all of my students do have that opportunity, and so being able to bring things, either bring things to them or take them to things is I think it's so important, and I have talked to many parents who are very grateful for that opportunity for them.
And I know you well enough to know that you're thinking about your students in everything that you do, but that dance isn't something only about dance. It's really about life and after school and after taking it into their career and family and all of that. So can you, let's bridge something here, which is, what are some of the skills that you believe that dance helps teach students that are really essential for them to be successful once dance is over, potentially, or at least high school's over?
Oh, definitely working towards a long-term goal. My students, even in beginning, we start at mid-September learning our routines for the show that's in the end of November. And though I do hear we're doing this again, I do hear that sometimes, but they understand that we add on tiny bits each day, and we build and build and build until, and then once we're finished, we perfect. I actually connect in my advanced dance class. I do it explicitly, but we even connect kind of the revision process of writing to their dance, where I say, okay, this is your rough draft. Now what can you do to revise? What can you do to make this a stronger piece? And so that, putting that work in, I think they take with them out of dance class. They make that connection in English class of a lot of kids want to write it once. They don't want to go back and look at their mistakes, look at how they can rephrase things. And definitely the kids in dance, they see the same thing. They want to be done with that piece. They want to see that it's finished. And what I try to tell them is it's actually never finished. That even when you get it to a point where it's performance level, it still can be better, it still can evolve, you can still make things better. So that big picture lesson, I think, is really important, especially for kids who want kind of that instant gratification these days. Also working with a team, even if they're not part of my Sapphire team, when we come together for our dance shows, it's kids from both beginning dance classes, from advanced dance, from Sapphire. We have the middle school come in and perform with us. And I try really hard to make it clear that we are all one company. Some people might have more skill, they might have more dances even within the show, but every person that's in that show is an important part of the company. And so this spirit of teamwork, I think, is another thing that a lot of my kids, they haven't been on a team. They haven't been part of a larger group, and they don't understand how much they rely on each other in that circumstance.
Bree, as you talk, you're just lighting up around talking about dance and your students, but also the community that you're helping to create. And really, I appreciate that you talked about just some of the elements that transfer over from dance to other parts of their lives, like goal setting and perseverance, a bit of grit there, sticking to things, and having a mindset of continual growth, that it's not instant gratification, but it's hard work, and even when you think you're done, you could actually do a little bit more sometimes to improve. And that really is, thank you for articulating that for us today. And Bree, I just want to say what an inspiration you are for me, and I know those who are watching, listening to you just have such joy as being an educator, having pride in your community, all of the people who've come before you, and what you're teaching the students today in terms of dance and using your English major, and you're just such an inspiration. We're so proud to have you as a teacher in our school districts in our county, but also as our 2020 Performing Arts Teacher of the Year. So Bree, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Talking with Teachers.